So I wanted to show you how I made the logo for Cartoon Feelings, which is a podcast that I host with my friend and comics artist Ira Marks, all about cartoons. I highly recommend it. I think we got a good 20 episodes out there that you can listen to now where we just nerd out about animation. But we made this logo, and Ira had this awesome idea to make a logo for the podcast where each of us did half of the lettering. So he sent me a file that had every other letter drawn in. He did the A and the T, this drippy T. And then I went in and I drew the other ones. And then I was like, we got to animate it, of course. So I used Procreate to animate a few of these different elements. And I also used Procreate to make this perfectly seamlessly tiling background. And then I colored it and made it animate. I tiled it and made it animate in After Effects. So let's just look at each of these elements individually. If I open up this pre-comp, this is where the text is. See, if I just click this solo button, you can see that's all that's inside of that pre-comp. So I'll double click it to open it up and zoom out a little bit. It's a bit hard to see with this dark gray fill. And if I open up the comp settings for this, I think it's, yes, you can change the background color of your composition. And I changed this to dark gray probably to help myself kind of see it a little bit better. So I'll lighten that up a little bit. Hit OK, hit OK. No, that's much harder. I will turn that off completely. And this is a little bit more tolerable to look at. So it might look like there's a lot going on here. And that's because some of what I did to animate this is using pure After Effects techniques. For example, this wiggly O here is, that was not hand-drawn animation. I used an After Effects effect to achieve that. So the ones that I used cell animation for were the T and the E and the I here. So let's look at the T. Now, if you look in this pre-comp, each of these letters is on its own. And that's to animate each of these individual letters. I cut out that specific letter from the rest of the logo and I put it in its own canvas in Procreate just by itself. And I just focused on making these frames. So I open up the pre-comp for the T, and let's look at that. And if you opened up the canvas in Procreate, where I animated this T, you would pretty much see this exact same thing, nothing else in it, but just these layers. And I have them here, each going about 4 frames. Let's see what I set the frame rate as, probably 24. So this is a little bit slower even, but I like animating things on 4s or on 3s because it's a little bit easier for you having to draw less frames, but it gives us a nice kind of cartoony look. And I did the same thing for the E, and it really is, if you look at each individual frame, just scribbling, it's pretty haphazard. Playback, you get like a nice fuzzy sort of a look. And let's see if we can open up the I as well and get a look at that. So you can see that I have this looping back and forth. So I actually only animated in Procreate these many drawings. So I started here at the original design and I just animated it getting skinny in the eye and big and fat for the dot. And then so that it would loop back out again, I just duplicated each layer in descending order and put them back to back. So if you play it back, you can see. And if you look at these, you can see that the names check out as well in descending order. This might make it a little bit easier to see what's going on if I reorganize this. So we go I1, I2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is the final frame that I drew, and then I go 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And I don't put the 1 frame here again at the end because it's going to loop back around here. And now if I open up the text comp, again. Well, how did I make this loop that way? So you could see this comp goes for quite some time. I can just play it. If I open up the comp settings, I can see it's actually 13 seconds long. This is sort of arbitrary, but 13 seconds long. But the pre-comp is much shorter. Now it's still looping, but it is only taking up this amount of time. So if I check the settings here, it's a little bit over a second long. Well, I'm using an expression to get that to work. And an expression is a little piece of code that you can add to any parameter in After Effects that will affect it. And if you haven't used expressions before, they can be really powerful, and definitely don't let them intimidate you. I don't have a mind for code at all, really, and I've gotten to know them really well over the years. They can be so helpful. But for now, if you haven't played with expressions before, I would just worry only about these ones. And then, you know, if it's getting you curious, there are a ton of really cool courses out there, information you can find out there about After Effects expressions. But primarily, this one is the only one that you should worry about right now. And it is the way that you loop stuff in After Effects. So let's start from scratch really quickly, and I'll show you how this kind of plays out. There's a couple of steps to this. So I am going to close everything up just so we can start fresh. And I'm going to make a new composition. And that's by going into the project panel on the left and clicking this composition button to create a new composition. And I'll get my settings and I'll make this, let's go again with 1080 by 1080. Okay. And let's do a simple animation. I'll turn off the transparency grid. I'll double click up here to make a rectangle shape layer. And now I want this to be small so we can animate it moving around in the space. So I will twirl down these little rectangles. And if you twirl down the rectangle path, there will be a size parameter. And if I just drag that down, I can make it small. I'll open up my comp settings, Command or Control K. Let's make that background black. And now I have this square. So what might I want to do with it? Well, let me open up the settings again. And yeah, so this is the same length as that letter composition. So, okay, maybe I want it to start here on the left, and then I want it to move over to the right and then go back to the left. So what I would do is I want to keyframe the position of this shape layer. So you can do that by twirling down the transform here, or learn all the shortcuts for these parameters. So if I have this shape layer selected and I hit P, it's going to pull up the position keyframe, the position parameter rather. And to set a keyframe, you'll just click here on the stopwatch and make sure that I'm right here at the play, at the beginning. Just make sure my playhead is right here at the beginning of the timeline, because wherever the playhead is, that's where the keyframe is going to go. Now I don't want all of these keyframes here. That's not what I want. So I'll delete these two that I just made. Now I have one here, and of course nothing is happening as I'm scrubbing, but I can go about halfway. It doesn't really matter where I go, but about halfway through the comp, and I'll drag it where I want it to go. If I hold down Shift, I can get it to snap horizontally or vertically. So I'll just drag it over here. And now that I have activated one keyframe, if I change that parameter somewhere else on the timeline, it'll automatically create a keyframe for me. And now I have two keyframes and you can see it animating. He's not going home, not going back to where he started. And I want him to do that. So I'm gonna go to the very end, and then I can highlight this keyframe and copy and paste. And then now if I play back, he's going back and forth. And so this looks great. It's looping right now. But if I take this, we'll call it like square loop, and I put it into what would be a main comp. So let's make a main comp. And let's say that my main comp, my final animation will be 10 seconds. Hit OK. Drag this to see the full amount. If I put my square loop comp in here by clicking and dragging it from that, you can actually do that as many times as you want. We don't want that, we just want one. But now I have my square loop pre-comped inside of this main comp, and if I play it, it does not loop because it's going to go away as soon as this is over. So what I want is for that not to happen, and that is by using that loop expression that I talked about. So what you need to do is enable time remapping on this layer. It's pretty easy, and all that does is sort of give you access to the timing of what's in here from a little bit of a higher level. So to access time remapping, you should right click on the layer or the pre-comp that you want to affect. I'll give you this menu and you'll go to time right here and click enable time remapping. And this is going to turn it into something that functions a little bit more like those Photoshop layers on the big poof smoke animation we saw earlier, where I could grab the end of it and just drag it out if I wanted to. So now I have a little bit more control over the playback, but it's still going away at the end because there's technically nothing here. And what we want to do is add that loop expression. So if I come over to the time remap parameters that have been animated, it generates these keyframes for the start and the end of that composition. And what I'll do is I'll hold down Alt on my keyboard and click on the stopwatch, and it's going to bring up the expression menu. So you'll type in your code, or you can paste, people post their expressions online, so you could paste those in there and play with them that way. It's a great way to learn a little bit more about them. And I'll just type in lowercase the word loop. And then this is really handy. So After Effects actually gives you an out here to auto-populate this. And what we want is loop out. So I'll just click that and then click out of that box. And here we have a loop. It's looping. I use this constantly for many, many different reasons. A couple things to note. You can sometimes run into this issue where right here on this keyframe, you'll get a blank frame. This is something that I think people run into a lot with this. There's two things to mitigate that. First of all, let's open up this composition with a square. And you want to make sure, not really sure why this is the case, but you'll want to make sure that this layer, or layers possibly if you have multiple elements inside these comps, you want to grab the very end of it and just nudge it over a tick. So you'll see that there's this tiny sliver where it's not covering usually, and you'll just want to drag that in. And then go back to your main comp. It's still happening. So for some reason, this happens a lot in After Effects. I do this a million times a day when I'm working with loops. If you're getting this problem, go up to Edit, Purge, All Memory and Disk Cache. So this is just kind of caching memory in your After Effects so that things will play back more quickly, but it just tends to sometimes get a little glitchy, lose some information. And so you might need to empty your cache if you're running into this, and it'll bring back that missing frame. And so you see now, if I play this back, we're not getting that little glitchy error. So that is your basic loop. So I also want to show you how you can tile your seamless patterns that you've made in Procreate in here. Now I'm not going to show you how to make a tileable background in Procreate because I myself learned it from a tutorial on YouTube, and I would like to share that with you. So this tutorial from Brave the Woods, I found this a while back, and he teaches you how to make, it's basically just a square design, you know, what you're outputting out of Procreate, And then you can tile that seamlessly in any direction, vertical, horizontal. Super helpful. It's a really great, simple tutorial, less than 10 minutes. Definitely recommend checking it out. You can make some cute stuff. And I use the techniques I learned in this video to make this background. So if I click on the PSD that I have in here, I can see a preview of the file. And this is what it actually looks like, the final drawing in Procreate. Just a square, things trailing off the edges, but this tiles seamlessly. So I'm gonna open this up and show you how I make a colorful tiling texture. So I'll take this PSD that I've imported. If you import a graphic without having it be in composition, so I showed you when you go to File, Import, and let's just grab this text again. There's an option here for footage, and if you set it to footage instead of composition, it'll just bring in only the PSD. It won't be layered, it'll just be flat. You'll get a flat PSD. So if you have something like that in there and you want to add it to a new comp, you can click and drag it down to this composition button here at the bottom of the project panel. And if you let go, it will create a new composition that's the same size as this. So let's open up our composition settings with Command or Control K. And you can see the tile image itself, I made it at 3000 by 3000 pixels. So that's not what we want. And I'm gonna want this comp to be, let's say 1920 by 1080. Because this is going on TV. And this is obviously huge now, so we can't see any tiling if we did have tiling on it. So I will hit S with this layer selected to open up my scale parameter and just shrink it down. And we can go really any size that we want. But like, let's leave it here. That's not bad. Okay, to make this tiled, all we need to do is use one simple After Effects technique. And you'll notice possibly that in opening this file, we are now in my custom windows and panels. There's a lot going on here. Please ignore that. We will go to the standard layout. So right where we're back before, probably similar to what you're seeing if you're new in After Effects. And then we'll go to our Effects and Presets window like we did before, and we'll type in Reptile. CC Reptile, that's what we're looking for. So I'll drag it onto my layer, and nothing's gonna happen right away, but you get these 4 different options to expand your design, and if you just click and drag them, After Effects will tile it for you. So I'll just go through and tile them out. Make sure I am dragging it far enough so that it's covering any blank spaces. And it's as simple as that. So I can drag this down and keep tiling it. So let's say I want it to be even smaller. You know, I scale it down to 10% of its original size. And then I can continue dragging that out. And it's super handy if you have a pattern that you want to use in a ton of different applications. This can be so great for that. I've used this background on our Instagram. I've used it as vertical video background for Instagram stories. And it's just super helpful for that. And then another thing we can do, since I made this design in black and white, is use the tint effect that I talked about earlier to make it any colors I'd like. So I'll apply tint, and then I can change the black to whatever I want. And I can change the white to be anything. And this way, if we have, you know, multiple different brand colors, and we, for Cartoon Feelings, have a bunch of different little retro colors that we like to play with, you have that option. And I just am using, in the main logo comp, I'm just animating the position of this background. So to get that seamless animation of it scrolling like that, I'm just animating the position in After Effects. And I'm not even using a loop expression. I am just rendering it out at exactly the right point so that if you posted this as an animated GIF, it would loop seamlessly. And then I was able to share this composition with my podcast partner, Ira, or I could render a bunch of different assets out of this comp for him. And we put it on social media, on our website, all kinds of stuff.
So I want to show you one more thing that is super simple, super quick for you to implement. It can make your life really easy when you're trying to play around with frame rates and you just want to add a little bit of flexibility to your animations. I use this constantly, especially when I'm working with Procreate animation for work projects. It just makes things a little bit easier for me to tweak after if I want to. And it is a little expression, like that loop out expression that we saw earlier, that I cannot claim credit for developing on my own. My dear friend and D&D Dungeon Master and expressions and After Effects wizard genius, Evan Abrams, he came up with this for me when I came to him with this problem where I would love to be able to take a sequence of images, just like I make all of my Procreate cell animation, and I'd love to be able to take those and drop them into a composition in After Effects and be able to change the frame rate just with just plugging a number in somewhere on an expression. And I am not a mathy person, and I was struggling to figure out how to make this work. And Evan was kind enough to take a little time to figure that out, a very little time indeed, and came up with this really cool little expression that I have been super grateful for and I use all the time. So I'm going to show you how I use that with this little animation here. And you can't see him dancing right now because this is, all frames just slapped down together. We've just freshly imported this file, but he's going to be doing a little dance. And I think it'll be fun to show you how this expression works on an animation with a little bit more frames than some of the other ones maybe that we've seen. So the first thing that we're going to want to do, well, let's just take a look at what we have. I'm going to open up my comp settings with Command or Control K. So we got our 24 frame rate, got a square composition, nice. It's about 9 seconds. So why not? Let's just make it an even 10. And then if you look in here, you can see I have my background layer and it's locked off, so I'm not grabbing it by accident. And then I've gone in and labeled all 14 frames that make up this animation. And really it's about 7 frames, and then it's swapped horizontally in the other direction. So he's kind of dancing one way and then flipping around to dance the other way. So I want to see that. And what you need to do to prep for this expression is to take all of your frames. So I will select all of my frames using shift clicking and then using Command or Control Shift C. I'm going to make its own pre-comp. We'll call that Dancing Rat pre-comp. So now you can see all those frames are in their own little pre-comps. So we'll click to open that up. And here we are. It's a transparent background because we want that background layer to be in the original comp so that it is not affected by the timing expression that we're going to use. So we'll come over here, back into our Dancing Rat pre-comp with all our layers. And what we want is for every single layer in this animation, all 14 frames, to be exactly 1 second long. So if we open up the comp settings for this with Command or Control K, we've seen when this pre-comp was generated, it went to this default 12 seconds roughly. I'm gonna go ahead and make that like an even 15 just to make sure that we have enough room, because we're going to be cropping this composition to the exact length of every frame, and that's going to end up being, it should be 14 seconds, but let's take a look. Okay. And because my comp is 24 frames per second, if I zoom in here and you can see, scrubbing this, that this is going to be the 24th frame. So this will be a full second. This is where we want to cut off all of our layers. So we can do that by highlighting all of our layers. and using Alt and then the right bracket on the keyboard, trimming that to 1 second, all of these layers. And then now we need to go ahead and stagger those out. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, yep, see, you could look here and see that it's landing on 14 seconds. So I'm going to come to the end of this layer and I'm going to hit N to trim the work area to the end where this cuts off. And then using Command or Control Shift X, that will automatically trim the composition to fit that size. So we can check settings again. We're at an even 14 seconds. Or if you like, we'll undo that. We can, with our work area trimmed to the correct position, we go to Composition, Trim Comp to Work Area, and that will achieve the same effect. Now, just to cover our bases for glitching out, we'll want to grab this last layer, drag it off the edge a little bit, and then we will flip back to our main comp. And you can see we definitely have animation happening, but for playback, like, oh, it's going to be every second. Like, well, obviously this is not desirable. This is not what we want. But this setup now gives us flexibility to use that expression. And we're going to enable time remapping on this pre-comp by right-clicking, going up to Time, Enable Time Remapping. And this is where we'll apply our expression. So again, Alt-clicking on the stopwatch. And it's a very simple expression. So you'll type time, little asterisk for multiplication. And let's just put an X here for now. So this is going to be a number. And we'll put a percentage sign or a modulo. And then we will put a Y here. This is going to be another number. And what these numbers are, see if I click off that, you can see it's not working. I'm getting an error from After Effects right now because I haven't actually put any information in here that I need. So X is going to be the frame rate that you want your animation to play back. So X is going to be the only number that you really need to worry about changing if you want to later down the line. So right now, I'm going to change this to 8. And that is the original frame rate that I animated this in Procreate. And Y is going to be the number of frames in the animation. So again, we saw it's 14. I labeled it 14. And if you look at the index number, which is right here next to this colored layer swatch, you can count. After Effects is automatically counting the number of layers in your composition. So I can see at a glance, this is 14 frames. So this will, and will always be for this animation, we'll change Y to 14. And now we can see that that error is gone. So what happens if I play this back? There we go. It's looking good. Oh, do you see? There's a little bit of glitching here. Again, just something that you're going to run into in After Effects occasionally. So do not be afraid to come up to Edit, Purge, and purge all memory and disk cache. That seems to solve the problem 99 times out of 100. So play it back, see, you can see that's gone now. And now we can see this in action. So if I change 8 to 24, it's going to go much quicker. And it's just as simple as that. So if I can't decide between, you know, our original 8, and I like that. Let me drag out the background layer a little bit more so we're just covering everything. I got my 8 frames per second. I'm like, I don't know, like let's see how it looks at 12. And I can just make that change super quickly. Now again, a huge, huge thanks to Evan for helping me to figure this out. It's been a lifesaver. And it's something that's honestly just kind of fun to play around with. You could export this to show some process if you wanted to, and to give people a better look at each of your individual frames. Something that people might not have noticed on this animation in particular is that his hands disappear in this frame. Was that intentional? Absolutely not. But on this particular frame, they are gone. And you can't quite see that at its actual frame rate, intended frame rate, because it's going by so quickly. And I almost feel like it kind of helps in a way. Like I just like the effect of that. And with that little tip, that brings me to the end of this advanced look at bringing your Procreate animation into After Effects.